All right, everybody, welcome back to Best Hour of Their Day podcast. Fern here at CrossFit Hampton Roads, longtime affiliate, just down the street from my box. Box owner, Lindsay London, thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
And you turned on the AC for us, too.
Sure did.
Nate's back there melting in the heat of the Hampton Roads.
Toasty 100 degrees.
100 degrees, it's fine. But thanks for, we were talking before this, I have not been here in a long time. I want to say it's been like probably 3 or 4 years. Maybe.
Not longer than that?
I couldn't remember. Like, when was the last time we had discussed, it was like, when was the last time there was a level 1 hosted here?
Oh, like 8 years ago, I think.
No.
I really do.
Really?
I really do. Not since I've been here. So.
Well, my daughter's 8.
Okay.
It's been more recent than that.
Okay.
But anyway.
So maybe I just didn't know.
CrossFit Hampton Roads, longtime affiliate owner. But you have been the owner for 18 months. Okay. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
And I want to get into all of that stuff. You know, what it's like to purchase a box, you know, what it's like to take that over and then work through some of the things you've had to work through. But before we get into all of that, sponsored by O2. Right. But you were just saying you guys have a O Tuesday.
Yeah. We just did our first one.
What is it?
So we actually just got our fridge. We've had O2 for a couple months, but we didn't have our O2 fridge. Mm-hmm. So
get it with it, Dave. Get with
it. So we finally got the fridge out and we put it out, turned it on, put the O2 in, and we told all our members to come on that day, Tuesday, to come get a free O2. So
is that every Tuesday?
No.
Oh,
no.
I was like, it's a bad sales strategy, everybody.
No.
That's not what we teach in the course.
No, just because it was we rolled out the product for the first time. So
that's cool.
And we have had Fit Aid in the box forever, and only Fit Aid. So this was the first time.
No longer.
O2. Yeah. So
official sponsor of the CrossFit Games too, by the way. Oh. And again, just support Dave and the crew there at O2. Awesome people. But that's cool. So that's actually a good strategy if you're going to roll out something, is like make the launch a little bit unique in that sense. Yeah. And O Tuesday has a nice little ring to it because it's O2.
Yeah.
So
that's perfect. Cool. So a lot of people liked it.
What's the workout today at the box?
The workout today is the standard from the 2019 CrossFit Games. So it's 30 clean and jerks, 30 ring muscle ups, and 30 snatches. Mm-hmm. If you want a little highlight, everybody, I did, in fact, no-rep Mat Fraser in that workout because that was the final workout I did.
Olsen remains in second. Gumason remains in third. This looks like it's going to be your men's podium. A no-rep for Fraser.
Yeah. Dang. He didn't stand up all the way.
Well,
go back and watch it. Yeah. Snatch. He had a little, as he's coming up, he brings the bar down at the same time. And I'm like,
the standard is the standard.
The standard is the standard. You might be the fittest man on earth, but you got to stand up with your snatches, my friend. So
that's right.
No, that was actually a great workout. And it was fast. It was way faster than I was anticipating from a judging standpoint.
Even today, I was like, that went way faster than I thought it was going to go. Yeah. So
this will air after the games, but I leave on Sunday to go to Madison for the week. And there's a handful of workouts every year that come up when you walk out on the floor. Like, as a judge, you've rehearsed it many, many, many times, but you're just quite not ready for the speed at which the athletes are going to rip through some of the stuff, and they have to bring your heart rate down pretty quick. You're like, oh shit! I was like, don't look away. So but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a cool game season. The cuts are on Saturday, I believe. Saturday night, I think, is when the cuts are.
Yeah.
So.
Are you guys going to do like a best hour get together?
We are. Yeah. Yep. So if you are listening to this right now, you missed it. So poor you. But yeah, we are planning on doing a get together one of the evenings. And I think with the O2 crew and Doc Spartan. So Dale.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then, so we'll be bouncing back and forth between judging and then doing quite a bit with the affiliate partner network stuff. And they're having a mock gym there. So if you didn't go to the games this year, you will see a ton of content come from us, but also they have a full functioning affiliate inside Vendor Village. Right. So it's a fully equipped gym, meaning like front desk, coach's office, floor, equipment, everything laid out, and they'll be running classes there. So I have class schedules and everything there. You may or may not just get to see me outshine Jason Ackerman from a coaching standpoint if you show up there, or just always in general. So
who designed it?
The actual affiliate, JP, who's been on the podcast, and then Mike Marone, who has been managing the APN, but he's moving over into a different position to take over some other projects. But primarily those two guys. Yeah, that was kind of like their baby. So it's cool. I saw the CAD drawings, and they're actually there today because we're filming this on a Friday, and they're like getting it all set up and everything. Like, it's gonna be cool. Like, I'm excited to see it, and if anybody that they'll probably do this again. But have you been to the games?
No.
You should go. And you should go to the affiliate partner network. But no. So if you go into Vendor Village, there was like typically right when you walk in, there would be like, if you go upstairs, they'd go up to the affiliate lounge, and then to the left, they had like WIT, and then there was like a big warehouse space. That warehouse space is now the gym, because it was like, I think it's like 3,000 square feet or something like that. It was like,
cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. So we'll be there. We'll be doing some presentations, facilitating some talks, and coaching classes.
Cool.
Helping people get their fitness on. So
it's like every affiliate owner's dream, like a blank slate budget as much as you want, all road.
I don't know. You get yourself in trouble. There's tons of good ideas that pop up in there. So. But anyway, I want to dive into your CrossFit story. So you purchased the gym about 18 months ago, but you were a member before that. Mm-hmm. How long were you a member here?
I was a member here since 2014.
Okay, so you're 8 years into this.
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 years later, you purchased the affiliate.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then in that time, there was two handoffs, two changes of ownership before that, or just one?
I came in right after the first handoff,
one. Okay.
And then I was the second.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the previous owner was here your whole time as an athlete, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because Nicole Gordon, Jeremy Gordon, they owned this originally, started this. She's no longer on some of our staff, but she was for a really long, and Jeremy was too.
She's, I think, doing the stuff with like redemption.
I think you're correct. Yeah, I think if I'm correct, I think she just kind of stepped away from the seminar staff, but both of them phenomenal coaches, good people. They're in Colorado now, in the Colorado Springs area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so cool. So just talk to you a little bit about that, like, because that's typically it's a coach that goes and takes ownership, but this was member.
Well, I was a coach.
How long were you a coach before that?
I was a coach. I got my level 1 year after I started CrossFitting. So I was a coach for 3 years. Two or 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went member, coach, purchase.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. So I was only a part-time coach, though. I wasn't like full-time at all. I coached 4 to 6 classes a week, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And the previous owner came to me and was like, "Hey, I'm going to sell it," and so I went to my husband and I was like, "What do you think?" He's like, "It's a great idea. It's the greatest idea ever." And I'm like, "No, it's not. This is a terrible idea." Because I know how much work goes in. I thought I knew.
I was going to say, I'm going to correct you on that because
I had an initial impression that it would be very difficult. And going from being a stay-at-home mom, and like also this was in the middle of the pandemic, so my kids were at home. I was homeschooling.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So I pulled them out of school for the pandemic and then homeschooled them. And then this all happened. And my husband was like, "You would be really good at this." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it. Like, sure, I'll be good at it."
This sounds like every story of the Navy recruiter's office of all time, where they're just like, "Listen, you should do it. It's going to be great. We have a really nice career set up for you." And you're like, "I'm going to be a cook?" How does this work? So okay.
Yeah. So he said it'll be a great idea, and we went back and forth, and then had the conversation with the previous owner, and he like onboarded me like a manager, because he was like, "Here's how Sugar WOD works. Here's how Mind Body," which was the system we were using at the time. "Here's how that works." Mm-hmm. Like, so he did all of that. We purchased the gym in May 7th, and that was it. And he hadn't been here for a while. Like, he had not physically been in the gym, and so
he was I don't want to say absentee, but he was not involved in the day-to-day operations.
No, he wasn't. And which was his prerogative. And
if you can do that, great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a manager, and so I came in and took over, and it was like being dropped into boiling water.
So that's kind of what so there's kind of like, we'll go through the story arc, if you will, because the change of hands or purchase of affiliate owner is not like a news story. It's not rare. It does happen.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of talk about yours specifically, because a lot of the either hiccups or the mistakes or the pain points are pretty pretty uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty universal with regard to how that works.
Right.
So let's start with original purchase. What were some of the things that you wish you would have done on your end as far as, either due diligence or questions you would have asked prior to purchase? So I don't even want to get into purchase yet.
What would I have asked?
Yeah.
Gosh, I think I would have pushed back about, I think I would have investigated pricing a little bit more. I think I would have.
Meaning like, tell me more, like what do you mean pricing? Because you're here, you remember you're a coach, you know the prices.
Yeah. No, I mean about the purchase of the box, I think I would have made myself learn more about like what goes into like why a business costs what it costs when you purchase it from somebody else.
Like valuation, like how did we come up with this number?
Thank you. Yeah. I wish I had investigated that a little more. I just, and this is just me, I'm a super trusting person. I think everybody I meet is going to be the nicest person ever and is going to take care of me and I'll take care of them and we'll link arms and go off into the sunset. And I'm not saying that I got taken for a ride or anything, but I just assumed if you were telling me something during the sale of the business that it was 100% the truth.
Right.
And because of that, I don't know that I educated myself enough.
Right.
Does that?
No, it makes perfect sense. And there's another wrinkle in that, which is typically that sale will happen between people that already have a relationship.
Yeah.
So in a lot of instances, people will forego some pretty significant pieces of due diligence, which is, hey, I'd like to see multiple months of bank statements. Like I would like for you to pull these reports. Like, can you show me the last 2 years of tax returns? Right. And a lot of people, because it's uncomfortable if you know somebody, you're like, hey, it's like,
right.
Can you show me all your dirty laundry? And they're like, well, I prefer not to. I prefer we just agree on this price point.
Yeah.
And it's not good or bad. And I wanted to talk with you specifically about this. When you're going through this process, being as objective about it as possible and having all of those conversations is the only way to do it. If you want to have anything that resembles an appropriate handoff and something that would look like a relationship after that, right? Whether it be cordial or just an acquaintance or anything.
Right.
But I think you just have to ask the hard questions and to make sure that everybody gets what they want out of it and that everybody understands the agreement moving forward. So I think people are just uneasy about that because, they see the number of members or they see all the equipment. They're like, oh, it's definitely what it's worth. And I'm like, but one of the things people don't look at is like, what's the liability involved in the business? Like, what are your expenses? What's your income to expense ratio? Like, is this thing making money at all? Right. All that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people just skip that portion. They're like, here's a number that we agree upon. I'm like, can you even pay that off? Right.
That, and like, I also had convinced myself that it didn't matter if it was making money. It didn't matter. Like, I was going to come in and save the day. And so, my ego got the best of me there. But like, I really thought like, oh, it doesn't matter. I asked for it. I see these numbers. I was a teacher before this. I've never run a business. And so I did not have enough information to make what I feel like is the best decision. And that's on me. And I just wish I had asked. I didn't even know how to ask hard questions. Like at that point, I was just like assuming that everything was told to me.
And just for the record, this is not to be disparaging of anybody. This is if we were just put this story out there absent of names or affiliate, like it's the same story on repeat.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, the other thing that we'll see, because we deal with these a lot, which is neither party knows the answers, right? So the person who's purchasing doesn't know to ask the questions. And if, in fact, they did know to ask the questions, the person who's selling doesn't know the answer. Right. So it's usually ignorance in a lot of instances.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I didn't know the questions to ask. It's like having a baby. Like, you don't know what it's like to have a baby until you have a baby. And everybody can tell you 100 times over what it's like to have a baby. And you're like, no, not me, and then I'll be fine. My kid will sleep, or my kid will eat, or whatever. And so you think you're the exception to the rule, and you're not. You're not the exception to the rule. Yeah. And that's everybody. And so, I just didn't know the questions to ask, and I got swept up in the like idyllic part of it, which is like, it's going to be fun, and I think at one point I'd been like, I'm going to plant a garden in the back. Like, I was like,
total hydroponics back here.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
I was delusional about some stuff. And so, yeah, and we didn't communicate really well about how the transition would go. And unfortunately, like, and this happens from what I hear, almost every time there's a transition of ownership, it's not communicated well and people's feelings get hurt, and it sucks.
Yeah, and that's what I really like the takeaway to be from just this conversation in general, is just have those conversations on the front end. And it's something I constantly like running through my brain is like, what would make this pleasant?
Right.
Like, what would make this super over the top fun? Like, everybody gets what they want. We high five and we like all run off into the sunset together. And it's like, take a little bit more time to negotiate. Take a little bit more time to lay out a plan.
Right.
Take a little bit more time to dig into the weeds. And everybody should come to the table saying, like, there will be some things that hurt my feelings in both parties, which mean you might not get the exact number that you want, because if we dig into this, like, it might not really justify that number.
Right.
Or it might justify more than that once we dig into the weeds. Be like, hey, this thing is crushing it on cash flow and you have a ton of assets in here. I'm actually going to ask for more now.
Right.
But the point is, you have to ask all of those questions.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you brought up there, which is, and I've been guilty of this too, you know, when I've either gone through an expansion and try to outside the brick and mortar endeavor or purchase, we tend to only look at the upside.
Right.
Instead of saying, what would go wrong here?
Oh, I don't even think that what would go wrong was a conversation. It was...
Well, I told you.
I didn't listen to you. That's what went wrong. I did not listen to you.
I don't know if you remember
Story of my life. I don't listen to Fern.
I don't know if you remember that conversation. We had it before the purchase,
yeah.
and I didn't say don't do it, but I said, hey, there's some things that you should consider here. Yep. Not because it was a bad deal, but if you ever want to know what it's like to be on a conversation with, like, should you purchase the gym? I'm going to probably try to convince you not to buy the gym. Not because I don't want them to buy the gym, but I want to paint a very realistic picture about what you're getting into, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's like, there's going to be some dead bodies in the closet. There's going to be some things you don't know about. There's going to be some things that were either intentionally or ignorantly withheld. There's going to be all sorts of stuff that you are just not prepared for, and that's what I want people to walk in there with, is like, I want them to be more alert instead of walking there and be like, all right, first day, this is going to be great. And you're like, the bathroom's broken and rent hasn't been paid in 6 months. And you're like, what the fuck? So that's not your case, but we see that far more often than not, is that, like, once they like sign the papers and they hand it off, all of a sudden you're like, there's what problems?
Yes.
And we didn't cover any of that stuff on the front end. So
no, you definitely told me. And, like, even the reason, which has come back to haunt me many times, which is, my husband thinks I'll be good at this. And you're like, do you think you're going to be good at this? And I was like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'll make it work. And it was,
my mom thinks I'm handsome. You're like, oh, thanks, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, you were like, you can't just do this because you don't want to do something else. You have to really want to do this 100% because it is all consuming. Like, when you guys say it, it's not an exaggeration. It is for the first year, even still days, like every waking moment, like when I'm with my kids, it's what I'm thinking of. And I have had to learn how to turn it off. But at the beginning, it was not. It was all the time.
And I don't think that's inappropriate. And I'm a big fan of, like, telling the truth. And I think a lot of us grossly underestimate the investment, whether it be financial, emotionally, or just time that's going to need to go into that.
Yeah.
Particularly if you want to get it to where you want to go.
Right.
Like, if you have pretty audacious aspirations for your gym, buckle up, man, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to hit big numbers and stuff like that, I'm like, listen, you're going to have to forfeit a lot of stuff.
Right. And that's why I sometimes think it's easy to settle for small, because the initial investment, like, it was painful, and to get to the next level, we're gonna have to do that again in, like, different variations of it, and you just have to know that you have to be willing to sacrifice some stuff for it. And I think there's, like, a big push for balance in life right now, and being an entrepreneur is not always the best job for balance. Like, you might get there where you can, like, leave work at 2:00 every day, and you might get there, but there are times where there's no balance whatsoever. Yeah.
Well,
that's how I feel right now.
You're not wrong, though.
Yeah.
And I think there should be there's a misinterpretation of this discussion about balance, and a lot of people mistake it for equity, which is like, hey, 50% here, 50% there. And I'm like, balance for an entrepreneur, depending on what season of entrepreneurship you're in, might look like 99-1.
Yeah.
That might be the appropriate balance for that. And then depending on what is going on in the business and where you want to take it, that may never get to 50-50.
No.
And the beauty of running an affiliate is like, you get to determine that. It depends on what you want.
Yeah.
But for everybody, for the most part on the front end, it's going to be more than you anticipate. And there's unfortunately, there's no amount of people telling you, hey, it's going to be a lot of work. Mm-hmm. You're not, like you said, you're not going to know until you step in there and you're like, oh, this is now mine. Everything that happens in here, I am responsible for. Good, bad, ugly, all of it.
Right.
And I'm going to have to deal with it. And you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah. Totally.
But so I want to kind of segue that into like talking about some of the changes that you have to go through, because they do come in iterations, so we had that initial conversation about, should you purchase the gym? What should that look like? And then I think the next conversation was a little bit more panicked in nature.
Everything is on fire and I'm dying.
Yeah. So, and then just starting to chip away at that and like, okay, I've got it now. It's my thing. I've got this vision for or I don't have a vision at all.
No. Yeah.
How do I start? Right. So I want to go back to that. Like once you're there, like what does that look and feel like as you start to make that? And I want to get all the way into the point where like we had this conversation. I'm like, you need to paint the walls. Yes. Like not because the paint's bad, but like you need to make this yours. Yeah. And that was a big transition for you too.
It was huge. It was, and I mean, I had a ton of respect for the previous owner and manager and absolutely loved my time when they were here. And it almost was like I was trying to stay in their shoes and their shoes didn't fit me. And so painting and rearranging and stuff like that was just my way of being like, oh, I can move these plates if I want to move them. That they're mine now. Like, and that took me a year. I didn't move a single thing in this gym for a year because I was always like, well, it's always been here. Always. And I don't leave furniture in my house at the same place very long. Like it gets moved around to suit our needs and stuff like that. And so I realized I needed to do that too. And I kind of just dumped it on all the members, which some of them were like, okay. And a lot of other people were like, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. But I kind of said to them, I was like, it's been a year. I feel like we've acclimated in other areas and now this stuff has to change. And it's all at one time, so it's less painful. But after this is done, it's going to be way better.
Right.
And it was, because it was like I stepped into my own. I started realizing that I was the authority. Like at the end, I made the decision. I wasn't playing out of fear anymore. I think that first year I was terrified. I was terrified to make the wrong decision and upset somebody. I was terrified to lose members. I was terrified to upset staff, like just make people uncomfortable. And after a while, I just realized if I keep doing that, this place will absolutely fail because I will be so miserable. I will cause its own self-destruction because I will just want to burn it down.
Well, it's kind of like, I was literally having this scenario, but it's just like, if you have kids, anybody has kids, like you'll get this. It's like, I can deal with this pain right now, or I can avoid it and push it off to tomorrow. And if I continue to do that, I would just never get rid of it. Like my son was like, I want cookies for breakfast. And I'm like, you're not getting cookies, bro. Like it's not happening. Right. And so we did that for 20 minutes and then finally like got him to sit down and he's just, all of a sudden he's just like, I want cookies. And I'm like, your breakfast is right there. You can eat the breakfast or you can starve. It's up to you, dude. And then finally he ate the cookies and then he was happy. And I'm like, I'm glad I chose to stand my ground there because I'm like, you have to. I'm not going to kick that can down the road. Right. And I think kind of what you were dealing with potentially, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome. And you're like, well, it's not mine. Because I remember when we had the conversation and then we talked, I think maybe a handful of days afterwards, you're like, I'm so relieved. Yeah. And it was just like fresh coat of paint, move some things around. It'd be like moving into somebody's house, but they still live there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was like I was living with a ghost. Like it was like, it was. And so I felt so much better. And I had members come out and help me and it was awesome. It, and people just pitched in and just seeing that they were willing to help was a huge bonus also.
Well, and this is for anybody that purchases a gym. This is what I will typically recommend is like, you need to go in there and you need to make it yours, whatever that means. If you have to paint the bathrooms, you have to move the equipment around, but we need to make this leap into this is now mine. Take ownership of it, which means if that GHD needs to go in the trash, then throw it in the trash. But we have to make some sort of leap to say, like, this is my thing. I'm doing what I want with it so that I take ownership of it. And then if that means paint the wall, put a nice logo on there, then do that so that when you walk in every day,
you're like, here I am. This is mine. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is mine. And that took a year. So I want to go back and because we've worked through a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And so you take over, and then what's kind of like your first hurdle that you have to get over? You're like, oh my God, I have to deal with this.
Well, my first hurdle was telling the staff, and so we closed on a Friday, and there was no meeting set. So it was like, close, we look at each other, go, okay, how are we going to tell the staff? There was no conversation before we closed. And it was like, well, I don't know, should we do like a Zoom? Like, and we're also still like pandemic-y times, like we wore masks while we did the closing.
Right.
And it's like, do we do a Zoom? What do we do? Well, because it was last minute. And we send a newsletter out every Sunday. So it was like, well, we have to send out something in the newsletter on Sunday. So we have to tell the staff before Sunday. So we need to tell them Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. I can't remember what we did. I think we did a Friday afternoon. So it was last minute. One person could come. We told one person. It just went over like it was awful. Like they were just... Nobody was happy with the way that we had let them know. The communication that was needed wasn't there. It wasn't handled well. And that was the first big hurdle. And now cleaning up after that, because now technically they work for me and they're my staff and they're pissed, rightfully so, because they feel like we're a community, but they've been left in the dark while this whole thing happens. And so that, like you said, the due diligence of the hard questions and stuff, like, how are we going to handle this? We didn't handle it. We just left it. And then I had to clean up after that. And then, trying to work with the staff of like, here's where we're going. Because you and I had already worked through some of the modules for Affiliate U. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I came in like with like 5 things I wanted to change right away, just to make stuff run smoother from my perspective. And the changes weren't well received. I think it was too soon, and everybody was like, well, I don't like these changes. Is this how it's going to keep going? And like having to navigate, well, I want to change stuff like that. I'm the owner and I want to make it better because that's what I want to do. But I got to get my staff right first. And so navigating, implementing changes and getting a staff that was cooperative was difficult.
Yeah. And again, the whole point of this is to kind of help future affiliate owners are going to go through this is like lessons learned, or when the military call after action reports. So after action report is bad communication, swift changes, bad combo.
Yeah.
And, and it was some of those things where we're like, hey, we're starting to get some clarity for you. The problem is we were just behind the 8 ball. Like we just didn't have that time. We're like, oh, it's done. We have to go.
Right.
And one of the things that you and I chatted about quite a bit is like, we have to work through the staff into the community.
Yes.
And that's a hard hurdle for a lot of people, because no different than the space, the staff isn't really yours. Like, and they're holdovers, right? And that's not disparaging to the staff, but this is like any sports team, any corporation, when new leadership comes in, there's a reason they clean house. And it's not because these people are bad. It's because they're not their people. Right. And you might have to go through a little bit of that transition as well. We're like, hey, you are great at this, but like you don't fit what we're trying to do.
Right.
And that's okay. Yeah. And it's not good or bad. It just is.
Yeah. And that was really difficult because I didn't want that to be the way that it was. Again, thinking I would be the exception to the rule, I thought I will somehow figure out how to salvage this and we'll all be on the same team again. And it ultimately didn't work. And as sad as that was, it really sucked. It sucked big time because they are people I care about. And as sad as it was, I also was able, I hired somebody from outside the box that wouldn't have ever I would have never met her, and she is now our manager, and she's killing it. She's fantastic. I love working with her. I feel so fortunate. And then we have new coaches. So I was really lucky to be able to find people. I don't even know that it was luck. I put out an ad. I made my intentions clear, and I was lucky to. I found the people that I needed, But unfortunately, we just ultimately couldn't make staffing work with some of the previous staff. And
again, I really want to stress that that's not a bad thing, and it doesn't mean anybody's at fault. It's just, again, you have previous ownership. They have things that they're doing. They have a vision. They have a direction they're going, and they have staff that fit that. And when a new owner comes in, well, those things change. And even a 1 to 2 degree shift can create friction in there because, well, that's not the way we do it. And it's just right, but we're not doing that anymore.
Right.
We're going this direction now, and here's the reason why. And I think people really struggle with that because there's previous relationships there, and they're like, well, I know you, but if you can't get along, then we can't get along.
Right. Yeah. So. And I thought that just because there was a previous relationship that we would get along. And again, unasked questions I didn't know to ask were what is the relationship between the manager and the owner, and should I know more about that? Because I didn't know to ask it, and there was a lot there that I didn't know about and still don't know about, that I couldn't accommodate that any longer.
Yeah.
So, it sucked, but it's okay. 6 months you lived through me.
Yeah, I mean, to make you feel better, that's most box owners I work for the first 6 months. They're just anxiety filled and don't know what to do and just losing their mind.
What's up, Best Hour listeners? I'm here with founder of O2, Dave Kalina. And if you haven't heard about O2, it's a cleaner, healthier sports drink. And the best part about it, only 1 gram of sugar. But what I really want to talk about is the special we have for you listeners.
So the special is pretty awesome. I know I'm biased, but I have to say we kind of went all out for you guys here. If you buy 4 cases of O2, you will get 4 cases for free, as well as a free branded O2 mini fridge, as well as one of these awesome O2 Yeti water bottles, and we'll even have the Best Hour logo on there. So it's pretty good.
This is something I drink every day. You guys know if you listen to the Best Hour podcast or you watch Dropping In, it's really important to myself and to Fern that we only support companies that we actually endorse and use ourselves. I love O2. I drink 2 a day. You can buy it caffeine free. I do that after 3 p.m. But if you want the one with caffeine, it's a great pre-workout. It doesn't make you jittery. It just makes you PR. So Dave's the man. He set up a great deal just for us, Best Hour. Check it out. 4 cases, 4 for free, a fridge, a Yeti, and you get our love.
You'll get all 4 flavors, by the way, in those 4 free cases. So you'll have 8 cases total, 2 of each flavor. And I think the best part about O2 is it just tastes awesome. So give it a shot, enjoy it. And we've got a 100% money back guarantee also. So if you don't like it, we'll take care of you, but that never happens. So
you're gonna love it.
You're gonna love it.
But it's a process, right? And whether you're starting a box from scratch, whether you're a 10-year affiliate who's had a setback, whether you're somebody who's doing well and having a backslide, whether you purchased it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to have their sticking point, and just having somebody there to kind of talk you off the ledge and be like, no, this is natural. Actually, any other scenario other than this is probably unlikely.
Right.
You're going through the necessary growth and changes in order to get where you want to go.
Right.
And the discussion we have to have is, are we going to acknowledge that and own it, or are we going to avoid it? Right. And those are the discussions.
And I really wanted to avoid it.
Yeah.
And that was where you came into play. And I don't think that anything would have changed if I hadn't been part of Affiliate U. Was you forced me to look in the mirror and over and over. It's I realize this sucks and it's painful, but you have to deal with it. And that also developed me as a business owner, because now when something's missing or not working, it's well, it's my job. I can't depend on anybody. Not that I can't depend, but nobody's going to care as much as I am. You guys say that so much, and it's so true. Nobody's going to care as much as I am at the end of the day. So
they might. So
I do think that a lot of people think they do.
They will.
Yeah.
And I would even argue that they can, right?
Yeah.
They won't on the beginning.
Right.
They absolutely can. But again, let's have a very real conversation about that. They can. And if you are going to have somebody on your team that does care as much as you do, they're going to be there for a long time. They're going to be heavily invested. They're going to have significant stability and impact into the community, and then they'll care. But if we're expecting just, some of the old people that were there or just a new hire that's not real, right? But once you start to build a team, which is what you're working on now, you can get to the point where other people look at things through the same lens that you do.
Right.
And they start to say, hey, let's make sure the bathrooms are cleaner. Like, you need to be earlier for class, or like clean that stuff, put it up, or like, hey, we need to throw some paint on the walls. And that, I think, is when you start to really see and experience like, oh, we're starting to build culture here. Like, this is actual culture where like I'm not the only defender of the realm. We have multiple people here who are looking at this and say, no, standard is a standard.
Yeah.
We're all going to uphold the standard.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is cool, because we've kind of worked through that, and you're not there. I'm not there. We're all working through that, but it's cool to have seen you go through that, because it went from, burning house to like, okay, we have different problems now. Like there's some other stuff going on there.
Yeah, they're just different. And, now I know to not avoid them. It's just like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's get it out in the open and deal with it. And this summer's been really interesting, because in building the team is like, I do another job outside of the box as like a volunteer position, but it's swimming. So in the summer, that's very demanding. The summer swim team is a lot. And I'm like drowning, and like
not literally,
not really, no, not really.
Listen,
no.
you don't want Lindsay to be your swim coach.
No,
I teach people to drown.
Here,
it's fine.
Here I'm drowning, and the staff is like, "Would you like us to help?" I'm like, "Nope, it's fine. I have it." And I didn't learn how to pass stuff off yet, and so that was the next step, was like to get the right people in the door, to help them become part of the culture, and then now they're like, "We would like to help, and we see you need help, so tell us what to do," and then learning how to hand that stuff off is what I'm working on right now, and so that's been another thing I've just had to learn.
Yeah, and it's okay.
Awesome.
And so what that looks like is we have the conversation with a lot of box owners, right? So, and typically just one step out of order can create serious problems. So typically what you will find is there's a box owner who has a lot of stuff, and they're like, I have a lot of things. I would like to give up one or two. Here you go. And there's no structure behind that.
Right.
So then it creates an additional problem, which is now I have to get this person to fix something without any guidance or structure or policies or workflow.
Right.
But then the other side is like, okay, we take the time to build things out right, and then we do it. But then I have to have another conversation about like, okay, well, when we hand that off, it's not just a blind handoff.
Right.
Like we have to create some accountability, some structure. And I think that's where you're at, which is like, okay, cool, you handed it off, but it's not fire and forget.
Right.
It's just like, how do we create accountability around? And this is a lot of what we teach for people who are further along in the course is like, what is your battle rhythm with the team?
Yeah.
And a lot of people they have an unrealistic expectation about what people will do when given a task.
Yeah.
Most people are not what I would consider self-starters, and that's not a shot at anybody, right? But they'll just do it to the extent that they think is appropriate.
Right.
And that's actually not weird, particularly if I've given no guidance.
Right.
That's actually the only obvious answer. Right. So what we have to do as leaders is, okay, here's the workflow. But now what I have to do is I have to create a structure where when you and I sit down every day, I'm like, what I don't want to do as a leader is say, did you do it? And you're like, yep, I did it. And then we move on. It's like, show your work. Yeah. And it's not bad, right? It's not like I don't believe you, but like we need to walk through that to show the accountability. It's just like, nope, I want you to show me the report. Walk me through each person that we're looking at if we're doing a retention report or the lead flow or whatever. And I think everybody skips over that. And I'm like, well, that's how you create cohesion in the team is like you have to sit down on a very regular basis, at a minimum weekly in my mind, and say, what are your tasks? How are they going? Mm-hmm. What are we stuck on? Right. And then
because stuff comes up, they get stuck on it, and it gets lost in a Slack feed or whatever. Like you can't get the login, or you don't have the password, or you don't have the credit card that you need, like whatever. There's all, and then that day turns into 3 days or 4 days, and then you're back at the weekly meeting, and it's like, oh, it's still not done because this pain point wasn't solved. But that weekly meeting remedies that because you have a solid touch point once a week to solve the problems. And
this is a good point, right? So a lot of people get hung up in creating the SOP.
Right.
Right. So I have this weird love-hate relationship with the term SOP. Because a lot of people are like, well, I need to write the SOP. I'm like, or you don't.
Yeah.
Or you could create some sort of framework.
Right.
I mean, what's the task? How do you do it? When's it due? Like that's the lowest level of SOP. Like those 3 pieces of information. Then the rest of the details can get filled in if we meet regularly.
Yes.
And I'm like, how's it going? And I'm like, it's broken, or like I can't log in, or like I need this. And they're like, cool. Now we can start to like iron that out to the point where like, do you need anything? You're like, nope, I'm good.
Well, and the beauty of that too is it's a collaboration now. It's not me just telling you what to do. And so like when you do, like Ray will do social media, and when she does it, here's the framework. It has her own spin on it. Like when she switched, people were like, oh, you're not doing social media. And I was like, no, I'm not, because we're still touching all the points, but it's in her style now because she runs it. And that's what's really cool, because you allow them to take over a task and have ownership over it. And it frees up some creative space in your own brain, because you're not trying to constantly create everything that you need for your gym.
Well, you just can't.
No.
Like, I don't care how productive you might think you are as a human being. Like, no human being has the bandwidth to do all things.
Nope.
Like, you just don't.
I tried. Doesn't work.
Me too. I still try. But even if you had like a, I don't know how to say it. Like, even if you had like a fairly small gym, you still would not have the bandwidth to do all of the things. So like social media post, scheduling, payroll, coach all the classes, do the programming. I don't know, any website, like bookkeeping. Like we could just, that's just what I can think of me, like restocking the bathrooms, cleaning, retail, design work, all of that stuff. Like it just turns into, and this is primarily what we deal with, it's just like chasing your tail. It's like fire after fire after fire after fire. Right. So we have to stop in some instances and say, how can we create some structure so that we can be driving the agenda instead of being reacting to everything.
Absolutely. And that's what we talked about last week. Like listing out all my tasks was eye-opening, because I was like, I don't need to be doing these things. In fact, I specifically hired Ray to do the things on this list, but I'm not giving them to her. Why not? Like, do it. And like set the meeting. And when I said, oh, do you want to meet once a week now instead of twice every other week? She was like, yeah, sure. You know, she's totally like, she wants this. And that's sometimes I think as an owner, we think no one's going to care as much as I will. So now I must do everything myself. And that is not the case. There are people who also care and they want to help, and you got to give them those opportunities.
And they want to do a good job.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
so
especially
like, let me
in a
help
CrossFit
them
gym. Like this is easy. Like
let me help them do a good job, and that's where I think, I don't know when I made this shift, but that's when at the affiliate, that's when at CrossFit Rep, that's when we started to move really fast, which was, like I've got people that want to do a good job. How about I give them some of these tasks and then I help them do a good job. Right. And I think that's what we forget our role is. Like we forget, well, it's like, I'll just get to stand back here and watch everybody. No, I need to help them do a good job. How can I make their job easier? Like, do we need to do an analysis on like, is this workflow even necessary for something like this?
Right.
You know, Cassidy and I still bat a lot of that stuff around. I'm like, is this efficient? Like, are we wasting time? Do we even need to do this? Mm-hmm. We have an outcome that we know we want. What's the fastest way to get to that outcome?
Right.
Right. With minimal to no errors. Like we have to wrap that in there too. And some of those is a lot of trial and error. We try it. You tried it 7 times. It didn't work. And then the 8th time you're like, oh, we got it. Yeah. Like, this is the one. And we can stick with this for a while.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we're in the middle of that with our onboarding. Like just
that's like perfect segue. I wanted to bring that up.
Just in the past six months, I think I've gone through like 4 different types of onboarding, and I'm still not terribly happy with it. I'm happier, but I mean, I thought that it wasn't a podcast, but there was like a video that CrossFit did, and they put it on YouTube with Nicole Carroll and
Nicole Christensen and David Osorio.
Yes. And it was awesome to hear their evolution of their onboarding and then how they do it now, and to go, oh, this is another thing. Oh, the walls don't have to stay black and red forever. Oh, I don't have to run my onboarding the way that it has always been done. I can do it my own way. And some were terrible, and some were great.
Well, and I think this is what is unique about the way that we teach that portion of it, because I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding that like we have this onboarding template that we give people, and they're like, this is the magic pill.
Yeah.
And then we get to that onboarding process and I'm like, no, we have objectives.
Yeah.
And I can give you a framework for that, but I need to know a lot of information because we have to build an onboarding, and there's things we have to take into account. Manpower, right? Who's doing the onboarding? Mm-hmm. what is their threshold for sales?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what does everything prior to that sale look like? And we unpack all of that, so if, there's, 100 plus people in there now. If I was to look at each individual onboarding, you're going to find a handful are the same, but all of them are going to have their own personal tweaks, because we'll adjust how they communicate with people right out of the gate. We'll adjust what's the initial offer. You and I have talked about that quite a bit. You're like, I don't really feel comfortable with that. And I'm like, then don't do it. Because if you're awkward, then it's going to be awkward. And if we design something that doesn't fit you and your personality, then that's a bad plan.
Right. And I think that's some of the feedback that I got when I initially came in, and that was one of the things I wanted to change, was the way that we did onboarding. And onboarding had been done the same way since Jeremy and Nicole were here, so for quite a while. Was like, well, we do it this way because it works. And it was like, well, me as a teacher, it's like, could we do it better? Can we do it better? How I'm always like poking, like, how do we make it better? And it was like, well, you just got this from this guy named Fern. Like, how does he know anything about our gym? Like, and it was kind of like, I don't know, but let's try it and see what happens. Turns out, didn't like it. No offense, but it didn't work. Your template didn't work for me, but I learned a lot, and now I just keep revamping it until it's what I want it to be.
And that's one of the things we teach people in there. It's just like, listen, if you want to fail fast, just take this, put no thought into it, and just copy it. It's like, it's not going to work. So what we give people is a framework, and if people want the spoon-fed version, I've got one for you, but I can tell you why it won't work in many instances, because that's an iteration that we've worked into. Now we can take that and we can make some slight modifications to it, like the number of sessions, the workout, how in depth do we go into the talking points. And those are all the things that we'll massage in there to include, all the way into the details of like, are you packaging the onboarding and the membership together? Like we talked about that. I'm like, well, if it doesn't work in your system, don't do it that way. It'll create a headache for you. And we will take people through, I think the most iterations we've done is 3 or 4 in somebody's time frame. Because what might be good for you at one stage needs to be redone in 6 months. It was just appropriate for where you were at the moment, which is like, in a lot of instances, like something is better than nothing. This is definitely not the end state, but like, we have to develop something. Okay, so here's good enough. And then we're going to make good enough a little bit better. And then we're going to make a little bit better good. And then we're going to make good optimal. But that's the general flow that we're going to work through, because there is no perfect onboarding.
No.
There's what's good for you.
At that time. And that was really discouraging at first, because I'm a perfectionist and I want it to be right the first time that I do it. And it's not. And this is like a living organism. Like, it changes all the time. And you have to be willing to adapt and always try to work what's better. And that's if I was to give you, like some feedback here, that's one thing that's one of the pieces of growth I've seen in you the most over the past years, is that you've kind of, I don't want to say completely rid yourself of the romanticism of certain things, but you're becoming less and less attached to certain ideas and looking more of like, does this work? Is this effective? And if it's not, I'm okay with throwing it in the trash. That's totally fine. I'll move on. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years is and I've made every mistake in the book, like not asking all the right questions, looking at only the upside, being romantic about certain ideas. And I'm almost to the point now where I'm like, it probably comes off as callous in a lot of ways, but it's protection from myself to say, okay, is that a good idea? Do I like that? Like, am I pursuing this just because it's something that we've done, or because it's a novel thing at this time? Or am I really scrutinizing this for like, what do we want to happen? Say, okay, what do I want to happen in the onboarding? And I'm like, okay, well, I would like a couple key things to happen in an onboarding. And it's kind of like CrossFit. It's like constantly function, whoa. I just messed that up, everybody. Oh, no. No level 4 for you.
No, my God. Nate's freaking out over there. He just started sweating. Constantly varied function movements executed at high intensity. So redeem myself. I think it's because of this O2. I drank O2. Caffeine. Yeah, too much caffeine. Thanks a lot, Dave. No, but it's kind of like that, which is, those are pretty wide left and right lateral limits. If I just say, hey, what's CrossFit? Constantly varied function movements executed at high intensity. Man, you can go really broad with that. And it's the same thing with an onboarding. It's like, well, what do I want to achieve in an onboarding of any fitness type? It's like, well, I want to make sure that the person feels seen and heard. Okay, that's the first thing. Like, I'm not going to talk at them. Like, I need to find out what they want. Then I want to create a general awareness around what it is that we have here and how we can help them and what problems we can solve for them. And then I want to integrate them into the community. And outside of that, we can design anything.
Yeah.
1 session, 12 sessions, fixed schedule, these types of workouts, those types of work. It doesn't matter. But if we can check those 3 boxes, we probably have a pretty effective onboarding. And you've gotten, every iteration, you've gotten closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's a product now that I am happy to sell versus.
That's the key.
Yeah. And when you said that to me, I was like, because it would be like, you said, can you sell this? And I was like, no, I don't want to sell this. I don't like this. Like, I wouldn't want to buy this either. And you're like, oh, why are you using it?
Don't sell it. You probably shouldn't sell that.
And so, yeah, now it's like, what do I want to sell? Then I am excited about it. And when people come in, they feel that excitement. And really, that's the key to good sales is like really liking your product.
Liking your product, not shocker, everybody, that you should like what you sell. And this is the beauty of CrossFit is like, you probably like CrossFit. We just have to put a little nuance onto like, how do we bring people into the fold and how do I give them an experience as we integrate them into the community that I feel good about? Right. You know, it's just like some people are like, we should teach the 9 foundational movements. And I'm like, how do you feel about that? Like, if you were to be really honest with yourself, do you feel good about that experience? Right. The answer 9 times out of 10 is no. Right. I don't. I'm like, I felt like I should do it. And I'm like, well, there's other ways we can achieve that. Right. Right. And again, not disparaging the 9 foundational movements. You should teach them. You should know them. Mm-hmm. They're like the base of everything that we do in CrossFit. Yep. But I don't have to teach them in the context of that moment during this person's journey. They're not necessary. Right. You know,
and you can't teach everything in your onboarding. Like you should not expect, like, don't give a level 1 as your onboarding. Like,
do not do that. Okay. As somebody who teaches level 1s and level 2s, they're not going to remember. So just don't do it.
No,
right?
like let that make a good foundation that they continue to just stack stuff on and when they come in. And that means that your coaches then are providing those nuggets in class. Also, they're continuing to add to that person's education. Yeah. So, yeah.
Speaking of coaches, you're working a lot on coach development.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
Well,
yeah.
You've made that shift, is my point, and so we're having those conversations about coach evals, and full disclosure, I told you to stop doing some of it.
That's why my answer was so weird. I was like,
so why I did that, everybody, is because, and I have no problem saying this, the CrossFit is safe. Yeah. Right. So you're like, I really need to work on coach development. I'm like, I'm not saying you don't, right? But right now there's some other things, right? So, and going back to what we were just talking about, it's just like, yeah, we thought that's where we were going to go. Right. I was like, you're not ready. Let's stop. Right. So you started doing it. You're doing all the evals, but then we found out like, hey, these other things are falling off. And I'm like, those can't fall off. No. So let's stop doing some of this right now. Yeah. Because CrossFit is safe. Like we always have that in our back pocket. Yeah. It's safe. Like I don't care what anybody says. Like it's safe. Anybody who says otherwise, like, sorry, you're wrong. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Like there's people doing it all over the place. Yeah. And they're just fine, right? Could they move better? Yes, that's a different discussion. But that's the point, is like this methodology is safe. Like that is it's like it's baked into the cake. Right. So yes, we need coach development, but sometimes I'm like, what's the return on doing that versus something else? Right. So I want to have 2 questions here. One is, I want to talk about what that was like for you implementing, or kind of like coming in and now doing evaluations on some of your coaches. And then I want to talk about why we stopped doing it.
Okay. So coming in and doing evaluations on my coaches, I onboarded a new coach. So I was doing evaluations every time that she was coaching. And, so that was just so that she could run an effective class. And the template that we used was really good for that. And it was a good reminder for her. It gives those coaches a place to start from. And so that's where it came from. And then for some of the other coaches, it was like, well, how do we shore up some stuff? Like, you're doing a great job. It is effective. It is safe. But like, how do we make better athletes and better people? And then we can incorporate those things through your warm up, your end of class sort of stuff. And so it just helped like tweak things, but also kept that communication between the staff and me. And then we ultimately put it on pause, which I talked to you last week? I think it was last week.
It was last week, yeah.
So last week when we went through like that whole task list and stuff, and you were like, shove some stuff off your plate onto Ray's. I did that. And then the next day I was like, I should probably do a coach evaluation. Look at that. I have some time.
Oh, weird.
Weird how that works.
What do I do now?
Yeah. And you were like, well, you'll dial in some, and then I had more time to pay attention to like my lead flow and my 180-day journey and like following up with clients and making sure that sounded like and was sending the message that I wanted to send. But then after that, I was like, well, I'm here and Mariah is coaching, so I'm just going to pop in her class and observe a class. So, and the other part of coaches development is like making sure my coaches know that they have opportunities to pursue coach development outside of the gym. So I really try to offer some like financial compensation for them to go to classes. We go together as coaches. And so it has made me a better coach to do coach evaluations. It's made them better coaches. It's made us better staff together. And our product is more cohesive because we do those things. Did I answer both questions?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
okay.
Nail on the head. But I was just more concerned with like, what was that process for you? Because some people will get resistance when they try to come in and kind of like, I don't want to say mess with the product, but taking a microscope and putting your product underneath a microscope and really, really be scrutinizing it and say, hey, listen, like we could be a little bit more efficient with our classes. Like you talk a little bit too much. Hey, like we need to queue a little bit more. That's not the greatest scaling option, stuff like that, you know, and a lot of people will find that to be a pretty uphill battle at first.
Yeah. With the existing staff, because I didn't have the respect. I was not the head coach. I was a part-time coach coming in. I had coached probably the least number of hours of everybody on staff, and now I'm the person doing the observation. So yes, at first it was an uphill battle. But here's the thing. You could coach not as many hours as me, but when you come to my class, you're a coach also. You know the points of performance. You know how a class should run. We look at the class eval together. You are just as equipped to give me feedback as I am to give you feedback. And so I think at first it was hard. And then once I had the staff that I wanted, it was, I don't know if that's the right word. Once I had a more cohesive staff, then it was not an uphill battle. It was just like, oh, this is what we do. It's just part of what we do. And most of them are like, yes, please, I want feedback. I want that. Please give it to me. If you don't give it to me, I can't get any better. Right.
And that's the culture that we were referring to earlier. And I think if we were to kind of ball up kind of the transition in one word of what you've been through over the last 18 months is like culture.
Yeah.
Like I have to shift culture.
Right.
And again, we're not saying good versus bad, mine versus whatever it was before.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the shift. And I think if we were to look at that a little bit more realistically and be honest with ourselves about like, what does it entail to shift and build culture? That's a heavy lift.
Yeah. It still is. Like sometimes I still see stuff happen where I'm like, that doesn't line up with what we're doing here. And then it's like, well, how do I figure it out? Because I'm the person who has to fix it.
Well, you're never immune to it. Like, I've been doing this a long time, and I'll show all the warts and stuff like that. So I got a group text the other day from one of the coaches, like, hey, just a couple pieces of feedback. It was one was about the equipment, the floors, and the AC. Mm-hmm. Or they're like, oh, it's kind of hot in here, which is kind of funny because we have AC, and I think the AC was just down that day, so that one was probably like a legitimate gripe. And a couple of the coaches like immediately took offense. Right? They were like, what? This is garbage. They're like, do they know? And I was just like, hold on.
Yeah.
I was like, number one, we can do a better job of that. And we should do a better job of that. So how do we do that?
Right.
And number two, and this is what I've learned by doing this long enough and taking a moment, reading it. And like, if I was to be very honest, like, yes, it hurt my feelings when I got that.
Of course.
Right? Like,
the initial
it hurts your feelings.
Is like, ooh, I don't want that.
They're like, whatever, get out of the gym. Like, go find another. Like, that's the initial response. But if the longer you do this, you're like, that's not useful.
Yeah.
Because I looked at it and I said, nope, those are legit. And more importantly, those are easy to address. Let's just fix them and show them that we're listening.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do we take this and say, oh, no, we're totally listening to you. So I sat down with Cassie. It's like, hey, like, tell me if you disagree with this plan on how to do this, and I'm going to let you run with this completely. I was like, but I also think that like if that came through, I'm not opposed to like sending an email to the whole gym and be like, hey, we got a couple pieces of feedback. Those will be fixed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
But 5-6 years ago, I'd have been like, screw them. Like, go find another gym. You guys have no idea how good you have it here. But I was like, nope. That's not, I was like, everybody calm down, take a breath. That's legit. I asked about the AC and I'm like, was there something broken? Like, is it turning off too soon? Like, what's the deal? And we solved all of them.
Yeah.
And yes, my feelings were hurt, but that's not the point.
Nope.
Like, they're there. My job is to be a leader and be the duck and say, hey, well, everybody's freaking out and wants to be combative. Like, no, how do we handle this? And how do we make this a W? And the way we make it a W is like, that's legit.
Yeah.
Let's address it and make everybody know that like, we hear you.
Yeah.
We're going on. So I can turn that complaint into a lifetime member.
Right.
By just saying, I heard you. I fixed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a member so we have a membership agreement now. Mm-hmm. We did not have that. That was another thing we changed. We put everybody on contracts. So this was a question I didn't know to ask. Literally, I found out after, was like, really, you can't count, not you can't, but like clients who aren't on contract aren't considered an asset because they can leave whenever they want. And no one was on a contract at all. And so we switched that over. And so now everybody's on a contract. And we also got a membership agreement. Well, that fell through the cracks with one of our members, and they canceled their membership, and they were charged because it wasn't within the 14-day period. And they were like, "What? Why am I being charged? I gave you my cancellation." And I was like, "Well, our membership agreement says this." And then I go and look at their profile, and they haven't signed the membership agreement. And so
what do you do?
I give a refund.
There you go.
Because they did not
do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And I was like, I'm really sorry. I didn't see that you didn't sign that. And so that's on me. So yeah. And he was very gracious. So, but yeah, just also people will see your broken windows sometimes when you can't see your own broken windows, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, you're either distracted or it's not the focus point.
Right.
Or people just focus on different things, you know, like, and I forget what it was. Like one day somebody was like, this is years ago. They're like, have you guys ever cleaned the PVC pipes? And I was like,
why would you do that?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
I was like, no, ever, you know?
Yep.
I was like, and now that I say that out loud, that's disgusting. You know? So it's just stuff like that. You're like, for whatever reason, it's like we wipe the bars down religiously, but it's just like PVC pipes in and out, and it was like, put that on the checklist of things to take a look at.
I never wiped mine down before, and everybody got really diligent about it during COVID. And so now I just go around and collect everybody's and throw them back in, and they're like, so you're not going to wipe them down? I was like, oh, yeah, I guess we should do that.
Oh, man. Are we doing this again?
We have to clean stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But
no, it's cool. It's been cool to, and like I said, this is the first time I've seen like the new kind of rendition of the space, and it's cool to come in and see, you know, the changes that you've made and you like taking ownership of it, and it's been fun working with you through that whole journey. So I think that's cool.
Wouldn't have done, I mean, you guys, you saved my butt a lot of times, or at least like you just kept going, like keep going. I'm
freaking out. I know. Just keep going.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't be here without you guys. Like becoming part of, I feel like a commercial sometimes, because like literally when I say becoming part of Affiliate U made my business better, it's made me better as a person, a parent, a spouse. It's not a lie. It's 100% true. And I am so grateful. Like, so grateful. From my very first meeting in a closet at Taekwondo or karate or whatever it was, literally the worst Wi-Fi ever, to you going, don't buy it, to now, great decision.
Well, and I think the point I want to stress there is like, it's a journey, right? Like there's still things that you're working on. You know, there's always another target, and there's always things that we can improve, and there's always iterations of that. But, you know, the big one, and which is kind of what I hope people will get as the takeaway from this conversation, is like, depending on where you're at in your affiliate, like there's different kind of roadblocks that you have to navigate. And yours, like a lot of people that purchase a gym, is I need to and want to make a culture shift. And how do I do that? And how do I approach that realistically and systematically so that I can get kind of like around the bend, and I'm like, okay, now I can start to drive straight. Because for a while it feels like you're driving in the dark, and like this feels like a really long way to get where I'm going. But it's it's how you have to do that.
Right.
You know?
And having you guys have been through that stuff, and then also just hearing from like our mentorship group calls where people are like, oh, well, this kind of sucked, or this is my win, like hearing people's different wins or perceptions of that, all of those things, like especially before I was in the grad program, because when I was just an affiliate U, those weekly calls, I made sure like my schedule was cleared for them, because they were so important, just to like talk to other box owners and then have you guys answer all these questions. And it's funny because I still watch the videos you guys put up on the website.
Like afterwards, you watch the recordings?
Yeah, I watch the recordings. Like they'll be on while I'm like cleaning rowers or whatever. And it's funny because a lot of the same questions get asked over and over again.
I remember that. Oh, that was me 12 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, rookie?
Yeah. Here's what you do. I could tell you. So yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm so excited for like what's to come.
You're 18 months in. I was like, think 10 years down the road.
I
You're
know.
like, where do I want to be?
I know.
That's
it's
cool.
Exciting.
Last question. Somebody who just recently purchased a box, right? What's a piece of advice you would give them? Just look right in that camera right there and tell them.
I can't do it with a straight face.
You don't have to do it with a straight face. This is a joke, everybody. Yeah. No.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. Oh gosh. My piece of advice to somebody who is purchasing a box is to over communicate. That's my piece of advice. Over communicate.
And I think you could take that and you could roll it into quite literally everything. else you do in your business.
Yep,
And every time I think I have a good grasp on communication, I find out that I have a deficiency in communication.
Over communicate with your people in your life who are going to be affected by your purchase of your business. Over communicate with your members. Over communicate with your staff. Over communicate with the businesses around you, your landlord. Like, just over communicate, because it makes you better at your job, because you really have a good handle of what's going on, and other people aren't shocked by things that are to come, because it changes a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So
I can't think of a better way to end this. Thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for having us. Appreciate
Anytime.
it. Nate here's sweating his face off. He's going to melt over there. But yeah, it's hot. But yeah, thank you. This is awesome. It's been awesome watching you go through the journey. If you guys have any questions, hit us up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
bye.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.